Hello, welcome to my lecture on narrating the non-human from the humanities. My name is Asun López Varela. I'm associate professor at Universidad Complutense Madrid, Spain, and I am a member of the Eurasia Foundation. I hold a course on Eurasia issues at Complutense, and it's my pleasure to deliver this lecture for the Eurasia series of lectures. Thank you very much for the invitation. And I'm going to be focusing on environmental and sustainable issues. I think we are all very much aware that we are witnesses the early stages of a six-mass extinction on the Earth. We have many plants, fungi, many species of insects and other forms of life which are disappearing at an alarming rate. Ecosystems, habitats, and material conditions of natural cycles are also undergoing radical changes that we have seen from the effects of climate change. And alongside the disruptive effect of these changes, we have collateral damage such as COVID-19 pandemic. And although significant advances are being made in various technological fields, these advances don't seem to be sufficient to halt the destruction of the planet. Now, so how can the humanities contribute to this scenario? This presentation raises questions about whether narrative fiction can be used as a prospective methodology to inform about these environmental issues, to make them understandable through stories, and raise awareness about aspects that require urgent solutions. So there are several initiatives. For example, the United Nations are talking about Sustainable Development Goals, and the European Commission proposes responsible innovation, research and innovation, RRI. So there on your screen, you have the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and you also have some of the aspects that are included in RRI, in responsible research and innovation. The goal is to ensure that innovation processes incorporate social responsibility as a quality dependent on the degree of inclusion and of a plurality of actors and perspectives in innovation dynamics. And this is aimed at achieving a reorientation towards widely shared public values rather than justifying innovation solely on macroeconomic terms. So for this reason, the Eurasia Foundation is also encouraging this series of lectures worldwide in order to raise awareness on these very urgent issues. So to talk about the non-human, I also need to mention about posthumanism versus transhumanism. Posthumanism is a critical stance that explores potential agencies beyond human agency. The term non-human encompasses both organic beings, animals, plants, and so on, and inorganic entities. For example, objects made of various materials, rocks, and so on. And also entities like artificial intelligence. No? All of these can exert agency in the world around us, although they may not possess consciousness and therefore responsibility for their actions in the same way that humans do. So this lecture raises questions about aspects such as the following. How do we imbue objects with meaning? What value does a narrative add to an object? Can human meaningful constructions around objects raise awareness about the importance of sustainable development and the need to care for our material environment? And the examples I discuss in this lecture are the following ones. Siren figurine, which is an object from the project called Significant Objects, we will see. Grandmother Poem on your left by Andrzej Kulniks, and also the graphic science fiction novel Design Intelligence for the Future of Learning. And this last one is an example of prospective methodology, which I will explain what this is. So these examples illustrate how narratives and storytelling can be used to give meaning to objects and convey messages about sustainability and the environment. And they show how creative approaches can also raise awareness and understanding of these important issues. So I begin with an introduction about how the concept of nature has evolved in response to how humans conceptualize our identities and relationships with the external world. And throughout history, issues such as industrialization and exploitation of natural resources have altered the human relationship with nature. And today, human process of environmental alteration are considered irreversible. Yet many production and consumption processes still rely on fossil fuels and leading to carbon emissions that contribute to global warming. In the 1980s, scientists, as you know, Sturmer and Crutzen, proposed the term Anthropocene to describe the geological era characterized by the undeniable human footprint. And paradoxically, it's a non-human time because our temporality is undermined by the persistence of objects like plastics that take a long time to disintegrate. Timothy Morton refers to them as hyper objects, and in that book, The Ecological Thought. And he also has other volumes on hyper objects, philosophy, and ecology after the end of the world. So neo-materialist approaches, such as the one that I'm presenting, expand beyond anthropocentrism, considering non-human actants in biological, climatological, and geological processes. And these perspectives highlight the interconnectedness of humans and the environment, acknowledging the impact of non-human entities in our world and the need for more holistic understanding of nature and our place within it. So writing about nature and the environment involves necessarily ethical and political issues. And you have there a quotation from Jovino and Opperman from their book Material Eco-Criticism, which says that to couple eco-criticism's interest in revealing the bonds between text and world with the insights of new materialist wave of thought, it's a necessary approach. So what is anthropocentrism versus biocentrism versus holistic approaches? You can see there the diagram, and we have evolved from this idea of a human-centered anthropocentrism to a pathocentrism, how scientists were exploring how higher animals had the ability to suffer, and this includes, for example, work by Charles Darwin. Then we have the emergence of biocentric approaches, some of them during the 19th century, particularly by the Romantics, where they conceived that all things have living qualities. And we are now proposing under this neo-materialism, this holistic approach, where we consider that the inanimate and the animate and the inanimate play an important role in the ecosystem, together, of course, with humans. No, so you have there some quotations from various books on eco-criticism. In ecology, man's tragic flaw is his anthropocentric, as opposed to biocentric, vision, and his compulsion to conquer, humanize, domesticate, violate, and exploit every natural thing. And this is from William Ruckert, one of the earliest eco-critic scholars. So the anthropocentric assumes the primacy of humans who either sentimentalize or dominate the environment. No, sentimentalize in the sense of the um, uh, pastoral, no, looking at the countryside and the landscape as an idyllic utopian place, no, but not doing anything to protect it. And the biocentric decenters humanity's importance, explores the complex interrelations between the human and the non-human. But we are moving beyond this idea of the biocentric into this holistic approach, as I said before. Donna Haraway, you may know from the Cyborg Manifesto, and from her a scholarship on cyber feminism. But she has this book, which is entitled Staying with the Trouble. And she talks about responsibility. This entails the analysis of ecosystemic consequences of technological innovation processes, which is one of the issues that she's interested in. No? And what she says, how she defines responsibility is the idea that although we cannot always choose what happens to us, we can always choose how to react to what happens to us. So, and she claims that we need this tentacular thinking, in order to, she uses, of course, metaphors from the animal world in order to react and to respond to the environment in a positive way. So other scholars who have been working in this area from a neo-materialist perspective, we have already mentioned Timothy Morton, and he says that interactions emerge surprisingly from the proliferation of both material and semiotic sign-related relationships. In other words, our contact with the world is both material through physical aspects and through concepts, through semiotic sign-making relationships. And Haraway also speaks of semiotic material nodes or knots through which bodies and meanings take shape. In other words, the relational networks between different entities exist in both the material and the meaningful realms, deriving their individual significance from interactions. And these networks undermine the habit of attributing agency only to living organisms, and particular humans, highlighting how objects exert discernible actions, often in indirect ways. So, for example, we have the work of authors like Jane Bennett in her book Vibrant Matter, and she discusses vibrant materialities, this concept of the inanimate, inorganic world having some kind of agencies. And also Stacey Limo, for example, who introduced the concept of transcorporeality, the idea that there are these exchanges between matter and that work across different bodies, animal, non-animal, and so on. No? And we have the work by Iovino and Opperman, which I have already cited, and also of Alexa Weik von Mosner, who are suggesting, are trying to incorporate the narratological dimension, saying that it can help raise awareness and seek solutions through the work of imagination that stories can provide. These authors point out that objects not only leave the traces in people's lives, but also contribute to shaping their life narratives. And this is the approach that I'm going to focus in this lecture. I'm going to give you some examples of how This has been tested and this has been researched. No, we also have work by Dipesh Chakravarty, who discusses forms of agency linked to narratives that offer the possibility of living in alternative universes through imagination. And I myself have worked on the question of agency from a semiotic point of view, talking about how we need to speak about co-agency. For example, one clear example nowadays is the use of artificial intelligence in writing. For example, we need to begin to speak about co-agency, because we are being agents, but we are using tools that help us in our agencies. And even if those tools, or in this case artificial intelligence, might not be conscious of what it's doing, it still has an agency. It is still doing. Okay, so from the cognitive sciences perspective, we have also some works that are of interest. For example, we have Keith Oatley, who works on the question of emotions, and in The Passionate Muse, argues that reading fiction can help people understand and navigate complex social situations and practice empathy. And this has also been researched from the point of view of neuroscience, like telling stories to children help them to empathize. So it creates like a virtual world of simulation where you can actually test your emotions. Oatley is both a psychologist and a novelist, and he draws on research on neuroscience himself. We also have work by Paul Armstrong, how literature plays with the brain, and in his work he demonstrates how narratives contribute to the development of empathy, as I mentioned, through mechanisms of mental simulation. And we have neurobiologists like Rizzolatti and Cigaglia in their volume Mirrors in the Brain, how our minds shape actions and emotions. And how this book explains how emotions are immediately shared, and this is something that we can see in everyday life. For example, if we have a teacher who communicates well and enjoys teaching his or her classes, then this is something that it goes across. It's more difficult in the case of online lectures such as this one. For example, in my classes, I am told that I'm a good communicator and students enjoy my classes, but it's much more difficult when you're speaking to through the computer to an audience that it's at the other side. But I do hope you get some of my positive emotional feelings across anyhow. Right. So, and we have Nicole Merola, who argues that just as scientific data functions as a means of conveying meanings, other cultural products, such as poetry in the case of this essay, can also produce meaning by interacting with affected registers that are not conventionally appropriate for scientific forms. So you have the covers of the books there on your screen. So I'm going to be talking about the first example, mermaid figurine. And the first thing I want to say is that, this is, I'm going to be talking about objects, and I'm going to claim that objects create emotional bonds with humans, or rather we create emotional bonds with things and the landscapes in our life, our house, the things that people, different objects that people gift us. And this goes beyond the value of the object. And they might be insignificant, but they might be very, very valuable for us and very meaningful. And this is more so when there is a story associated to the object, when the story, when the object is attached to some particular context. So beyond fetishism or consumerism, material objects become, from a semiotic perspective, signs associated with specific moments, with people, with experiences, desires, and values. In the case of significant objects, this is a project that is linked to small, worthless objects, and it draws attention to how ecology and economics work together to bring value to small things. It highlights how narratives can imbue meaning and significance into even the most ordinary and inconsequential objects, and it can shed light in their cultural and emotional importance in our life. No, it was an experiment that was conceived by a New York Times columnist, Rob Walker, and editor, writer, and semiotician Josh Glenn. In 2007, Glenn co-edited a volume taking things seriously, which included a collection of photographs and essays about objects. And he talked about these objects having an unexpected importance. And 2 years later, Walker and Glenn launched this project online, Significant Objects, which aim at testing how the stories are a powerful driver of the emotional value of any object. So they wanted to measure this value objectively. And so to do this, what they did is they bought a series of objects, all of which costed, each of which costed less than $1. And they invited 200 writers to write micro stories about each of these objects. Some of the stories were written by well-known authors, others by not so well-known. In any case, the objects were then auctioned at on eBay, and some of these objects sold for up to 10 times more than their original purchase value. No, so this demonstrated that the story associated to the object could transform this object into give it emotional and sentimental value and significance. No. So I'm going to talk about figure of mermaid, mermaid figurine, which is a story written by Tom McCarthy. He's an English novelist who has won several awards, and he is interested in sustainable and ecological aspects. He has a novel which is called Reminder, and this story echoes some of his interests and also the authors that inspire Tom McCarthy, among them James Joyce. No, the story, it's about an object, a figure of a mermaid figurine, which is found in an old boat washed up on the beach of Dead Horse Bay in Brooklyn, New York. And it begins to, it has many eschatological references that remind us of James Joyce. It's a very, very short story, and divided in several parts. And we have here some quotations just to give you an idea of how it sounds like Joyce's Ulysses. No, pollution coastal waters can have, the black sun of melancholy, signatures of all things I'm here to. This line in particular, signatures of all things I'm here to, it comes from the chapter 3 of Joyce's Ulysses, no, the Proteus episode. So what is McCarthy doing in this short story? He's using complex intertextuality. He mentions figures, literary figures such as Apollo, Phoebus, and Byron, and mythical figures and literary figures. And he talks about literary waters, you know. So he compares the waters of the Dead Horse Bay, which are polluted, to a kind of pollution, literary pollution produced by intertextuality, because he's using all these quotes from other books, no? In particular, as I said, from Joyce's Ulysses. It also brings to mind the short story, the several of the chapters in Ulysses, not only Proteus, but also the Sirens episode, no, and also the chapter 17, which is known as Ithaca, and there are some lines in Ithaca where the protagonist Leopold Bloom is using expressions. Um, which comes from very kind of scientific field. And we have like the voice of Leopold Bloom, the protagonist, and also Stephen Dedalus, the other protagonist. And they talk about like different languages. One is the utopian language of Stephen, and Leopold Bloom speaks with kind of scientific language. No, so we have expressions like wind-generated surface advention, parameter estimation, which are very much Bloomian. And then we also have Stephen's voice, no, again from the Proteus episodes, with quotes like "the limit of the diaphragm," no, and inspiration on the question of the siren songs, which is also in Joyce's novel, no, and there you have some of the quotes from McCarthy's short story. Why see money, DC and DT decay and mixing, language, tide and wind have silted to a build-up of pollutants during the night of the tones, you who console me. So McCarthy's microtext, it's woven with many echoes from Ulysses, and it creates a web which captures a kind of a speculative mode of writing that investigates this textual co-agency, not only in terms of literary intertextuality, but also in terms of what this object, how did this object reach Dead Horse Bay, and how and inviting a reflection on this beach, no, and it places emphasis on the figurine, but also on the coastal environment. And as you know, Dead Horse Bay is a beach in New York City, in Brooklyn, that it's part of Barren Island, and it was filled with bones from actually horses, dead horses, because there was some butcher factories nearby, and there was also many non-biodegradable materials, and these bones were also used in the production of fertilizers. So it was contaminating the food chain of other animals and of humans. And only 3 years ago, the National Park Service announced that the Dead Horse Bay would be closed indefinitely due to the presence of radiological contamination. You may have more information about this, since you may be living close to this environment. Right, so the second example is Andreas Kulnick's grandmother poem, and this one, Kulnick is a professor in Canada, in the University of Southern Ontario, and he employs photomontage to raise awareness on how nature connects to human life. No, he uses paper cuts, which is almost like a sort of a child game of using these little bits of paper to create the branches of the tree, of a maple tree, which is one of the iconic symbols of Canada. And he also connects the story that is told in these paper cuts to family memories. His grandmother, who was making syrup from maple syrup, no, from this tree, no. So he establishes this kind of cosmic connection with the figure of the grandmother becoming a sort of a Gaia, the primordial deity of or Mother Earth, and the ancestral mother of nature, and creating this link between the image, the text, and his own family memories and landscapes that surrounded his childhood. No, so it's a very interesting piece to think about how a photograph in this case and the poem attached to it can bring value to a tree, which, as you can see in the image, has been burnt. It has suffered from a fire. No? So in this slide, you have some information about the cut-up technique and how it was employed in avant-garde experimentation. But I'm going to skip this part. You can read it in my PowerPoint because I don't have very much time. No? I maybe just to point out that it was also used in Cubism. Picasso also added like this idea of revealing different aspects, different perspectives to objects through using these cut-up techniques. No? And maybe just to finish, how the photograph points again to small stories from another dimensional space and time, and arranges these fragments, opening up possibilities for non-human voices to emerge. No, some of these non-human voices emerge in silence, in the silence of objects. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about prospective methodology, because the last example that I'm going to talk about today is a science fiction comic graphic novel, which uses prospective methodology to explore what would happen if something, if we included, in this case, in the case of this novel, artificial intelligence in education, which is, I guess, a topic very much in fashion, in vogue at the moment. No? So the prospective methodology it's also can also build on the idea of Donna Haraway responsibility. How do we use speculative fiction and technoscience to address current issues, and how these narratives can present hypothetical scenarios that allow reflection on real problems. So this last part of the lecture complements the first part, which focuses on the agency of a small objects and their stories, the stories associated to these small objects. And this last part focuses on these more speculative issues of graphic novel in this case. No. So the foresight methodology or prospective methodology actually uses these speculative situations, scenarios, in order to imagine what could be, what could happen. No, and the reason why I'm using this in the last part of my lecture is because in the last couple of years, we are witnesses the emergence of artificial intelligence in our daily lives, in particular with DALL-E, which is used in design, or ChatGPT, which we're all using to help us write or translate or even program. So what will happen to our mind when we if our life, if our languages are all mediated through artificial intelligence? No, if we continue to use ChatGPT and we are not contrasting information, because, as you know, it does make quite a few mistakes, particularly when you ask ChatGPT for a specific information. So I would like to mention here some scholars who work on the question of agency, co-agency, and how things can shape the mind. In particular, we have the work of Lambros Malaforis, who is a cognitive archaeologist in Oxford University, and he wrote in 2013 How Things Shape the Mind, which was published by MIT. And he put forth his theory of the material engagement theory, which is the idea that things are coextensive parts of our minds in action. So in other words, how we manipulate things, how we use technology, in this case artificial intelligence, will shape the way we think about the world, will shape our mind. And this idea that Malaforis proposes is nothing new. It comes from Merlin Donald, whom you can see there on your screen as well, who was also working on these issues in the 90s, and even before the 90s, there was research that was showing how the world that surrounds us, things can we need to contemplate this holistic approach that I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, to think of things as part of what we do, as part of our agency. And very quickly, just to give you an idea of how far this reflection goes, to mention Plato's Phaedrus, and where he's actually talking about the technology of writing and how it can improve memory. And they are having doubts, in the Phaedrus. He's saying, well, perhaps this technology is not so good, because it will, even though it might help reminding people of things, it will also contribute to the deterioration of their ability to remember. And you know that in Plato, the ability to remember is very fundamental, because it was the way to access the world of ideas, this divine realm that could only be accessed through some kind of intuitive form of remembrance. So it's interesting, because in the initial stages of new technologies like ChatGPT, it's common to exaggerate the reach, and this leads to both fears and expectations regarding their impact. I guess many of you are already using ChatGPT, and you can see that it has its limitations. So it's great help. It can be great help, but it also has still a long way to go. Right. So one of the problems about using artificial intelligence, and in this case tools like ChatGPT, is the fact that they can lead to a loss of ability to develop and express our own ideas, and it can have a negative impact on the competence of critical thinking, used in innovation, in problem solving, and in creativity. So faced with the boundless information of artificial intelligence, critical thinking is the art of boundaries, the confines of the infinite. In this sense, the critical imagination that can be exerted through prospective methodologies cannot fall in utopia, and must be cautious regarding human creations and the conditions of possibility. And the reason why I mentioned this is because you're going to see the utopia behind the science fiction novel that I'm going to be showing you next. So this science fiction novel is called Design Intelligence for the Future of Learning, and it has been created by a research group at Singularity University, which is an institution in Silicon Valley founded in 2008 by Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil. The objectives is the application of advanced technologies, robotics, artificial intelligence, biotechnology, to address global challenges facing humanity. As you know, Kurzweil is a prominent advocate of the technological singularity. These are his books. The singularity is near, no? And the idea that rapid technological progress leads to the explosion of artificial intelligence, and this would radically transform the world. So he's actually talking about how the human will become a hybrid of with a machine. No, this is a transhumanist position, which is different to the post-humanist. Remember, we mentioned the post-human at the beginning of the talk. It's a critical position against this kind of very utopian approach, no? Which is the transhumanist, human enhancement. So, of course, Singularity University has faced this criticism for having these futuristic and transhumanist visions, and proposing human augmentation or human enhancement and so on. In 2019, they hosted a two-day workshop that was using these prospective methodologies to explore how artificial intelligence could influence education. And the result of this workshop was this science fiction novel, which is a graphic novel. No, it uses the design thinking approach, which I will mention in a minute, and in design thinking, I don't know, design thinking emerged in a few years ago in American universities, became very popular, and it uses also visual language. So that, I guess, this is why one of the reasons why the novel is a graphic novel. No, it was developed mostly in Stanford University. So the novel is available in open access. So it's called, as I mentioned, Design Intelligence for the Future of Learning, and sci-fi DI, and you can find it and download it to look at it. Here I have some of the snapshots from the novel, and it's about a future student learner plus who has as an EPI, which is a neo-educational personal intelligence attached to his persona, and this enhances, augments the possibilities of this human person. No, the protagonists are two young boys, Carlo and his sister Javi, and they are 7 and 10. And one is passionate about humanities and music and painting, and the other is more scientific. So the novel talks about how this artificial intelligence, NEPI, personalized artificial intelligence, can enhance the persona, of the protagonist, the two, the boy and the girl, and how it helps, like, for example, with visual information, auditory, kinesthetic, verbal, logical, mathematical, emotional, and all forms of interaction and intrapersonal learning as well. No, so the focus is on learning, and on how also the learning environments connect the context, the family context of this protagonist. No, so the nepis, for example, are based on haptic holographic technologies. They can simulate environments, which of course is very interesting, to visualize worlds from the past, for example, and also, the novel speaks about exoskeletons, of which can enhance physical abilities in sport, for example, and also talks about their environments, the how they live, no, the houses that they have, how they can. Everything is operated in the cloud through neural networks and so on. No, I'm going a little bit faster because the talk is going on too long, and you can, of course, explore this on your own when you download the novel. No, they live in these skyburbs, which are neighborhoods that combine all the necessary services for the future of living. And so the buildings have close ecological systems. Everything is produced and reduced to generate zero waste. So this is all very good, but it also there are also some buts. There are also some problems to this utopian novel. No? In this slide, you can see the history of design thinking, which I have just mentioned. It's related to some startups that started, for example, in Stanford, the IDEO company, and also Tim Brown, Human-Centered Design, HCD, and a methodology that has become very, very popular, not only in educational environments, but also in companies. And one of the collaborators in Singularity University is Robert Suarez, who has actually worked at IDEO, which is this organization specialized in design thinking, which emerged from Stanford. No? So just to show you the connection, no, between the methodology, the prospective methodology that they're using, and the history of design thinking. So conclusions. At this point, I would like to transfer the responsibility to my audience and open up the discussion of whether or not humanities can contribute to developing responsible awareness in the face of sustainable development challenges. Do you believe that animals, objects, and environment in general are seeking ways to get our attention so that we can act and save our planet? Are they actually acting on our lives? And so we also have some uncertitude. So many of the speculations about the future of education have been focused towards the emergence of artificial intelligence. And so also this is one of the areas to discuss, whether artificial intelligence has the potential to contribute to education in a positive way, what are the pros and the cons, and so on. And I have many, many questions, some of which are in this slide. Maybe you can discuss later on in your class time, whether how are these the use of artificial intelligence in our education systems change the way we work and the way we learn, the way our mind works, and so on. So there's more things to think about. Also, the question of gamification. How can gamification, which is also propelled by artificial intelligence, in many cases, can it help the learning scenario, the educational communities, and which are the challenges? And also the methodologies. Is design thinking a methodology that can help us act, because it's one of the issues, no, as well. And at a personal level, how are these methodologies going to change our lives, the way we learn, and the way we qualify for a job. So many, these are all different questions. So I've come to the end of my lecture, and I repeat the quotation from Donna Haraway, which comes from Epictetus. It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. So these are some of the issues that I have tried to raise in my lecture. I'm sure that those who have listened to me have many more questions, many more comments. I'll be very happy to receive them, your questions through into my email box. And thank you very much for listening to me. And the last slide is some of the books recommended readings.